Okay, so I've done a number of these videos thus far, and I just want to do a quick video for guitars specifically because that's really the first videos that I've made. So just to get off holiday gear that's cheap, that is generally a good idea for anybody who maybe doesn't have these specific pieces of gear. Now, number one, I would say is, actually, let me just get the box. Joyo Tweedy. This is the Fender Tweed version of the Joyo band amp. It's basically a Tweed band amp, so all you need is a cab and this, and you're good. And I mean, if you can find them on the used market, cool. You never will though, because I mean, those of us that have these, I'm never selling this thing. It only cost me like $180, and I have a Fender Tweed for the rest of my life, which works. Like, it works. I'm never gonna need a loud Fender Tweed in a room ever, so that's all I'm ever gonna need for tone purposes, and even just home recording purposes, you're fine, because you're not going to be recording in a room as loud as you'd be recording in a studio necessarily if you're doing home studio stuff. So that's a good option. Also on the short list, I'd say the Joyo Botson is one that I think that everybody needs, and these are just my favorite Joyo and Donner pedals. There's this one. This is the iSet Dumbler. You can actually find this. I keep looking it up. If you just type Dumbler into Amazon, you can find these. These are like $30. And that's another shortlist recommendation, because you can find $25 to $29 pedals. They're all different names, Sondery and whatever. I might find the clips, actually. I should just screenshot them and just put them right over here, because I mean, there's a lot of good deals out there. And there's actually brands and pedals that I don't really see many people talking about. For example, those. And also even the fact that you can find Boss pedals used for cheap, and Boss pedals are bomb-proof. Like, you're never going to have a problem with a used Boss pedal, really. I have a loose nut on one of them. Actually, it's over in my DJ setup. But outside of that, actually, great Joyo pedals that I'd recommend would be the compressor, the what's it called? It's the compressor with the scorpion on it, that the Dyna Comp. The Atmosphere is a good reverb, but to be perfectly honest with you, the Atmosphere is probably, you could argue, one of the best reverb pedals under $200, like, imaginable, but it's not stereo. I don't know if that matters to you, but a stereo reverb pedal does a lot, like, a wider variety of things. And I'm not even saying, like, if you're not just a guitarist, you don't want the Atmosphere. It's not good for that. And just used gear in general, I think people kind of skip out on that, or the fact that acoustic guitars are cheap now and they're actually good. I've done the other videos about the Carbon acoustic. That guitar is still great. It's one of my favorite acoustic guitars, just period, because it's winter and it's the only guitar that I can just leave in the room, and all my other guitars can be in their cases and I can still play them whenever I want. But I always have that, and it's always right there. So I don't think people really recognize that as a really value. Like, a lot of people will look down on like a Martin X series, but Martin X series guitars make acoustic guitarists much better at playing the instrument than someone who doesn't own one of those, because you always have it in the room. Like, you don't have to put it in the case. You don't have to case baby an X series or an Alvarez MD60. Those are the guitars that make guitarists really, in my opinion, from like intermediate to expert. Like, those are the workhorse guitars, Larrivee D2s and stuff. But and I guess that's like the Larrivee. They got like a core series now that's just solid wood guitar, which is probably sick. Like, I would love that, just a satin finish Larrivee with no bells and whistles. Just give me a Larrivee solid wood guitar. I don't care about, I just know they construct guitars really well. I don't care about binding. I just want smooth edges, and just give me the guitar. Like my Martin has a beveled edge, and like, people don't recognize how much better that is. Like, just that 45-degree angle on the edge and you're good. Like, it makes the whole experience just easier for hours at a time. You don't get chafed. Anyway, yeah, that's another shortlist example. Martin X series used, you can find for around $500. Don't go out there, honestly, in this economy, I don't recommend necessarily going out there and trying to find like expensive acoustic guitars. I have expensive acoustic guitars, they're great. But once you cross the $2,000 threshold with acoustics and all the solid wood, and like it has a good top and everything, and you've tested it's the one you want, you're not going to get, it's diminishing returns the same way it is with electrics, you know? Like, a $6,000 guitar is better than a $2,000 guitar. They're both like made in Nazareth, but the $6,000 one's better. but it's only really like 3% better. But at that point, it's like that 3% is impossible to, you know what I mean? It's kind of like the Heisenberg thing where anybody can make crystal that's 97%, but only Heisenberg can make 99%. It's kind of like that. Like Boucher is one of the only companies, Dowina, a lot of Czech Republic companies and German companies. So a lot of European companies making great guitars in Canada. And we're really some of the best. Like if you really compare the resources that we have to put towards that, I'd say we're better than Americans. Europeans and Canadian guitars are like my bread and butter personally. I'm dreaming of a Boucher right now, but I'd have to sell all of my guitars to buy it. So still kind of just thinking about it, and that's why I'm kind of going through it in my head. Another thing is amps. And outside of like amps like this, I've seen some of the Line 6 Bujera amps used for cheap, like really cheap. Like I've seen them on Facebook Marketplace go for like $250, $300. That's a tube amp. It does 5 different tube ampy kind of things. And usually, almost every Line 6 thing, I'll say this because I've had 4 different Line 6 amps in my life and I've had 3 different Fender amps. They're all great, but the Line 6 amps, you can't do anything. You can't mod them. Fender amps, you can usually change the speaker in them and make them better. Even their modeling amps, you can do that. It's a little better. Line 6, you can't really do that. It just doesn't play nice with that kind of stuff. And Line 6 cleans are great. Like there's something about Line 6, they nail cleans, they nail reverb and distortion. They really do. But their high gain distortion, I like it, but it's terrible. It's kind of goofy sounding. Same thing with Boss. I don't really like Boss distortions either. I love their acoustic amps. I have their acoustic amp, but I wouldn't mess with any of their electric amps. Like I'm sorry to the Katana fans, but I stick with Line 6 over Boss. Usually with that stuff, it's reliable. I already have integrated gear, so I'm kind of biased. I have to buy their stuff, but that's just gear buying advice for 2020. What is it? 2024. I have to second guess myself on what year it is. No, but seriously, I bought a lot of gear over the years. It's usually budget gear, and it's usually gear that I can just flip. Like I buy a pedal for $40, I can sell for $40 kind of stuff, or at least get a trade-in value of like 30 for it. And being like a savvy guitar buyer guy, it's been a pretty good year for that stuff. And I wouldn't recommend necessarily just digging into like any of the boutique stuff yet, because I think as time goes on, as people realize that circuits are circuits, a lot of stuff, like a lot of old Strymon used stuff is going to get cheaper. And not necessarily. I mean, really, if you look, the sign that won't happen is actually the fact that Technics 1200s turntables are still like $600 used. Like they've been $600 used since 1980 because they're just that good. And because they're so good, and that's what I mean with the high-end Keeley Strymon stuff. That's UA stuff and all that. But like, this is kind of my point, all right? This, and I have the Mesa Boogie 2 dual rectifier one. This and that's all you need. You don't need any other amps. You need this and that, and that's it. That's it. I don't need to say any more than that. Like, you don't need that. Those 2 amps together cost what UA pedal costs on sale in Canada. Like these 2 plus a cab to play them through costs the same as one pedal. Just one pedal. You'd still need the speakers and everything else. And this comes with cables and stuff, and a pedal. This comes with a pedal that you can switch from, and the pedal's really useful because you have 2 different stages. So, yeah, you don't even need pedals with these amps at all. You don't even really need a reverb pedal because it just has this great tube atmospheric kind of response. These are amazing. Bantamps are freaking amazing, and I think they're underrated. And yeah, just making my 10-minute rant about holiday gear. I wonder what my thumbnail's gonna look like for this.